So continuing on the identity and access management uh, in AWS, so we will be discussing about why we have IAM roles, because we have discussed about users, we have discussed about groups, we have discussed about policies, right? Now, what are IAM roles? As you can see on the screen, AWS services, when they need to communicate among themselves, like how they manage. I mean, we cannot go ahead and attach an IAM policy with an Amazon EC2 instance. This is just not possible. And yes, we can definitely attach an IAM policy with a user to enable him to access a particular service, right? But let's say I have Amazon EC2 instance, and there are certain applications that are running on the EC2 instance that need to access files from AWS S3 bucket. Now, how this kind of communication will be enabled in AWS? This is enabled through IAM rules. So when services need to communicate among themselves, we need to create some rules that can be assigned to the services so that they can communicate and carry out the work, right? And another area that I will be discussing is multi-factor authentication. That is another layer of security that can be added through virtual devices. Um, like we can install a Google Authenticator app on my, we can install it on our cell phones, and then we can generate the MFA codes to log in. So this is additional layer of security that can be enabled through the multi-factor authentication devices. So we will be discussing about this also. So coming on to IAM rules first. So let me show you where we can define the rules. So we have discussed about groups, users, policies, right? But we have not discussed about roles. So let's say I go to the roles option over here. So I can see already a number of roles being created. So let's say I go to EC2 access role name, right? So it allows EC2 instances to call AWS services, right? So there is a policy that is being attached, right, to this role basically. So that enables uh, you know it to have EC2 full access. So we this will be clear, if we can create a role, right? So let's create a role. So we can select, the very first step is to select the entity, for which we have to create the role. So our discussion here would be limited to only to the AWS service. So I will be selecting this option. Okay, so under AWS service, I have these, that different services like EC2, Lambda, right? So I select EC2, okay, and I click on next. Now I can select the policy that can be attached to this role basically, right? So I want my EC2 instances to be able to access S3 buckets. So I would be selecting a policy that gives full access to S3, right? So next, I will be assigning the role name, full access to S3 from EC2 instances, right? So, okay. And so this is the policy that is attached to this role that will enable the EC2 instances. So I create a role, right? So this is what I was talking about. So now this role can be attached to the AWS EC2 instance that will enable the applications to communicate to the S3 buckets. Okay, so this was all about roles. Now the another thing that I wanted to discuss was the multi-factor authentication. So I am going to select one of my users that I created previously. So under the security credentials tab, I'll see this option, assigned MFA device. Since I have not assigned any multi-factor authentication to this user ID, so it is coming as not assigned, right? So, but I can, so I will be demonstrating a virtual MFA device, okay? So I'll be selecting this option, and so I have a Google Authenticator app already installed on my cell phone, and I would be scanning this QR code through the camera of my iPhone, and as a result my Authenticator app will be open. So it will ask like whether I need to add the token or not. Okay, so I will be adding the token. Okay, so I'll click on yes, and I will have the token added. And so the next step would be, after adding the token, I would be entering the two consecutive MFA codes from the Authenticator app. So the first one that I'll be entering is 038256, and I'll wait for the next code to appear in the Authenticator app. So this is nothing but a very simple concept of adding additional security to your IAM users. A particular IAM user will be able to log in only after entering the MFA code. After entering the password, you will be required to enter the MFA code also. Then only you will be able to log in. So the next consecutive code that is coming in my app is 438984. So I'll say assign MFA. So I was able to assign it, right? So now you can see I have assigned MFA device, and how we can test it out. So I will log out, and I'll try to log in with this IAM users. So let's log in. I'll say sign in to different account, and I'll enter the account ID, trail data, admin, and I'll click on next, and I'll enter the IAM username as Jack and the password as 123. I click on sign in. See, it is asking for MFA code, and this was not the case before, right? So now I'll be entering the MFA code by opening my Google Authenticator app installed on my iPhone, and I'll pick the code from that app. So I'll enter the code that is appearing right now. So it will be 696314, and I'll say submit, and I'll be able to log into my management console. So this was all that I wanted to discuss as part of our discussions on identity and access management in AWS. So the next discussions that we will be carrying out would be on the storage services. Thank you guys. Stay tuned for the upcoming videos.